First, you must realize that you have no idea before you can know the idea. We scan across all the frequencies if we want to learn anything new. Let us begin.
What has physics done for me lately?
Furthermore, the equation E is equal mc squared.
We have now acquired a fateful power to alter and to destroy nature.
That's like when you're in physics and you go to Dreamworld saying, oh, this is a physics excursion.
Science. What is it all about?
The whole of human history all falls in the dust of one stroke of the nail file. You can't really get to grips with evolution unless you realise what an enormous amount of time.
Our own planet is only a tiny part of the vast cosmic tapestry, a starry fabric of worlds yet untold.
You tuned in to what can only be described as the best radio station on this blue dot we call Earth. It is, of course, for Triple Z, your community broadcaster. Be it on your conventional wireless radio by tuning into the classic frequency of 102.1 FM, digital devices such as DAB or smart speaker, listening via the Community Radio Plus app, or streaming us live from our sensational website at 4zzz.org.au. And of course, you can always listen back to our show or any 4ZZZ show using the ingenious on-demand feature also found at that URL. We also have a weekly podcast of the show for your listening pleasure, curated by Toby, a condensed version of the show without the music, which my mum prefers. Just search for our show name, which is, of course, No Idea, spelt with a K, your weekly dose of science. And joining me for this episode to speak about all things science are two of my favourite science influencers. Good morning, Peta.
Hello, Max.
Hello.
I'm glad I'm still one of your favourite science influencers. I don't know whether it speaks to me being a good science influencer or whether you just haven't found others.
That's right. And we got Gabriel.
Max, I'm going to need you both to hold my hand during this one. It's going to be a long walk. I was been thinking a lot about the formation of. I've been reading or audiobooking the Hail Mary book because the movie's coming out, right? And so I've been thinking a lot about space, galaxy, formation of the universe, all this sort of stuff. And one of the big things is that I've been thinking about is the formation of solar systems and just the amazing process that happens over hundreds of millions of years as we go from a large spinning disk circling a young star of gas and dust, and then things sort of gradually come together. And
that's the origin story for this show too. That's what we
exactly right. And there's been some new research about this. Like in late last year, NASA's Hubble telescope found the largest one of these protoplanetary disks ever observed. It's spanning 400 billion miles, roughly 40 times the diameter of our solar system. And one of the ways we learn about these is through little meteorites that end up on Earth. So that's meteor being, or a little chunk of an asteroid comes off, becomes a meteor, hits that's in the Earth's atmosphere, and if it lands on the Earth, survives that journey, and there's a little bit of rock or whatever it is on the surface, it becomes a meteorite. We call it a meteorite. And there was one of these that landed a few years ago a couple decades ago, but some new research came out a few years ago called the Simone meteorite, which was formed during that birth of our solar system in that phase of gas and dust, and everything's so hot and it's all liquid.
I keep forgetting every week.
I forget
it's all liquid, and then it sort of hardens. And as it was hardening, there was iron in some of the material, and so the iron cools after the heat cools off. The iron cools and solidifies, and because there's magnetic fields going on, ages ago during the formation of our universe, these meteorites that we find on Earth sometimes preserve the early magnetic fields of that. A very young sun. And so you get to see what's going on with the magnetic fields early in the universe. And they found, this was in 2014, they found that there was really strong magnetic fields going on, and it led into all this understanding about how strong the magnetic fields must have been throughout these pulses that were getting sent out, massive shock waves, shock pulses, pulse shocks that were getting sent out during these early phases of our universe. And then that meteorite has then been circling, meteors has been circling around for millions of years, eventually hit Earth, came down through our atmosphere, landed on Earth, and there's not much left of it by the time it hits Earth. And so when they put it on the scale, do you know how many grams it read, Max?
That's brilliant. Tell me.
691 grams, and it just happens to be our 691st show. I really struggled to find one for this. I don't know how long I can keep this bit up, but 691 grams is the
Why
way
don't we
to the
just drop
Samarkand meteorite. We will never drop it. We will never drop it. Coming up on the show, I've got some stuff on ADHD and how it might be linked to sleep states while you're awake. And I've also got that interview with Pirelli that we did while they were here, chief engineer of Pirelli, while they were here for the Formula One. So we'll get into that later on in the show as well. What do you got, Max?
I've got streaming services might be indirectly causing more fatalities on the roads. So we'll see.
And Peter?
I'm looking at some friends that might be a little bit surprising under the water, as well as how we learnt to scream and about screaming, which is sort of interesting.
So we've got Issy in the room.
Hello.
And we'll do this,
I have talked my teeth out about dolphins, whales, and orca culture these past few months. It has been a real cetacean rotation, in my opinion. So now I thought we could talk about some emerging ocean social culture. You know, I'm young, I'm hip, I'm cool, I know the culture, I'm down with the wet beings. So group living is a common thing across the animal kingdom. Basically, if you're in a group, you might have benefits including like better access to food, protection from predators. You know, if you're in a group, you look bigger, you're a bit more difficult. You might have more access to mates, opportunities to share information if you're an intelligent species. But not all groups in nature are like social. You know what we mean? Like animals might just be in the same place for the same reason, like there's a food source or they like the habitat, all sorts of things without actually choosing each other as like a, hey, let's hang out sort of vibe.
Right.
And if there's one animal under the water who we think this would probably apply to the most.
Is it us when we broadcast from under the sea? We just choose to be in the same show as each other, but it's purely coincidence.
It's coincidence right now. I didn't actually know you guys were signing on. I've just decided to be here. But I think one of the animals under the water that we think of as being like the most solitary, the most lone predator is a shark. Sure. Sharks are kind of just thought to be like, they like hanging out on their own. They don't talk to others. They're just them. That's what they do. And like from birth, they're on their own, out in the water, hunting, blah, blah, blah. But evidence has actually been building for decades that many species form these non-random social groups with preferred partners, but it hasn't actually been sort of proven yet. I think the last time we saw something like this was, do you guys remember the shark queue that we talked about?
The shark queue. Oh, Q is in line. Yes, I do.
Line.
Yes, they got into, it was the deep water sharks. They got into a sort of feeding queue based on who got there first or something, and they just weren't.
No, but that's not it. It's not who got there first. It was a social hierarchy. So based on a bunch of different factors, they autonomously created a social hierarchy, which shows that they have those social, like knowledge. They know where they sit.
Sleeper sharks or something, right?
There was a Pacific sleeper shark there,
yeah.
but that was also mainly tigers and stuff. That was off of Hawaii, I think. Anyway. The interesting thing about sharks is that sharks have a brain-to-body mass that's actually sort of comparable to mammals. So how big your brain is compared to how big your body is, which does actually suggest that they might be capable of complex social cognition. Today we're looking specifically at bull sharks, which is one of the ones we're more familiar with here in Australia. I think bull shark is a great name for these guys because they are kind of bullish in their behaviour. They just like to bite first, think second. They're just a bit... I don't like to use the word aggressive because aggressive implies intent, but they're just sort of bitey. They're sort of bitey and they're sort of rough, and they're just a bit rough, tough sort of guys, and they've got like these big shoulders almost in their body shape. Now, these bull sharks are actually from Shark Reed Marine Reserve in Fiji, which has been a place where bull sharks have been fed for over 25 years. So these are people feeding bull sharks.
Wow.
What, for fun to see them? So why not?
As tribute, Max. Maybe we should try this in Brisbane. Feed them so they leave us alone.
That's what we do with the rowers, Gabe. That's why they row in the river.
The rowers are the
obviously. So this research comes to us from the University of Exeter QS ranking police.
Exeter again.
Yeah, Exeter's big on sharks.
81 or 83 it was, I think.
55, I thought.
155. 155, 2026. And what they really wanted to know was whether the bull sharks at this marine reserve are truly choosing each other as social partners, or whether they just happen to be in the same water at the same time, you know, because there's food there. And they did this by looking not only at who was there and when they were there, but actually the behaviors of how they interact with each other, which is a step beyond a lot of other research that's already happened. So this was over 6 years, 473 dives, and there was 8,192 minutes of footage of these dives, which is a lot of stuff to look through. And in that, they found 184 individual bull sharks, 151 females and 33 males, so vastly more females in the area than males, and they just sort of tracked them on their dives. They also looked at so one of the things they were looking at is when two sharks were within one body length of each other, that is sort of considered being together and associating, because they don't generally do that. Bite range might be a good way to think about it. It's just sort of like, it's kind of close. It's a bit more close than you would want to be if you weren't mates. And then they also looked at behavior. So joining, leading, following, parallel swimming, turning back, all of those things are considered like friendly social behaviors. So then the first question they really had to answer was, could any pairings be random chance, right? If you looked at what would happen randomly, does this match that? And no, it doesn't. Cool. They are, in fact, having friends. So that's kind of interesting. But not only did they find out that they have friends, they may have also had enemies is a strong word, but they certainly didn't like hanging out, which I thought was really interesting. So they were like, you, yes. You, absolutely not.
Right, okay.
Not again, Nelly, get away from me. And they also found that male sharks have way more social connections. They also prefer to hang with females, which was interesting. And they think that given the site is primarily visited by females, they think these like bolder males might socialize strategically with females to maintain access to this food source and avoid being excluded by the dominant females. Like the big bully females being like, nah, get out of here. Yeah. So they're like, nah, I'm actually chummy with your mate Sasha, so you should let me in and give me some food. That's sort of the thing that they're looking at. And the other thing was that adult sharks formed the social core of the network. So they had more friends and hung out together more than the young guns or the oldies. The oldies actually had the least social interactions, and they were not bothered with the youths. They think it's probably because as they get older and wiser and more proficient at hunting, they don't really need to have these social bonds. They don't benefit them in the same way that they would as when they were younger. So they just kind of don't have friends, which is sad but also understandable.
And when you say old, how old would they be? The
that's a great question.
Yeah.
I actually did not see the exact age range, but it would be sort of like they have sub-adult, adult, and older adult. So it's just in that latter bit of their lives. And it's just sort of interesting because this study is one of the most detailed examinations of active social preferences and interactions in shark species. And it sort of advances this idea that sharks aren't just lone predators. They're not just on their own. They actually have genuinely complex social lives that we just may not recognize as easily. The one thing I will say is, as I mentioned at the start, this site is a fed site. So the 25 years of regular feeding at this site appears to have created the conditions that promote this long-term familiarity and social bond formation, like these sharks coming back day after day in the same area with each other. So I think the question is, would this be mirrored in the wild, or is it the food handouts that make them more keen to couple up?
Because we have seen in previous studies, which are very different animals, that when food is not at a premium, when it's widely available, that tends to be the conditions where you do get...
Tends to heighten the tensions between the animals.
Yeah. The New South Wales Shark Smart fact sheet says they get to 30 to 50 years old and they spend up to 4 or 5 years in the area where they first spawn as pups. So for age
this is
ranges.
pups, so they didn't look at pups at all. It was all sub-adults, adults, and older adults.
Cool. Okay.
Cool.
How good is the feeling of finding a nice rock?
A nice
Have you
rock?
had this? You know when you're walking along, you're on a lake or something, you look down, you find the perfect little rock.
Yeah,
Do you get this?
Nice shiny rock.
Collect it, maybe bring it home.
I'm not bringing it home. But
No, this was my whole experience as a child.
Yeah.
My favourite hobby, go collect
This
rocks.
is. I knew you'd give me what I needed, Ellie.
For sure, don't you worry. You're listening to 4ZZZ.
You tune into 4ZZZ, and the show is No Idea with me, Max. We've got Issy, we've got Gabe, we've got Peta, and we've got this.
Yes, Max. There's been a new study that has found one of the reasons people with ADHD experience lapses in attention, slower reactions, and increased errors is that their brains may enter a sleep-like state while they're trying to pay attention. This comes from psychologist at Monash University in Melbourne. You got a QS ranking?
Stop it.
63.
86.
Wow, Max, 36.
Yeah.
Pretty good.
Damn.
Pretty good. Now, sleep-like states aren't exclusive to people with ADHD by any means. It is a normal phenomenon that happens during demanding tasks, according to the lead researcher of this study. They think of going for a long run and getting tired after a while, which makes you pause to take a long break. Everyone experiences these brief moments of sleep-like activity. In people with ADHD, however, it's known that this activity occurs more frequently. So what this study was trying to do was go, okay, is there a link between what we know is a heightened likelihood of sleep-like brain activity to some of the common problematic symptoms of ADHD, like not being able to pay attention and making errors and stuff and sort of blanking and, all those sorts of bits that get brought up, especially during moments where you're trying to pay attention. So ADHD itself, attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, is a common condition affecting hundreds of thousands of Australians, about 1 in 20 of us. So they wanted to do a study and say, okay, let's see if we can link these two things together, if there's a potential causation here of this sleep-like activity with some of these problematic symptoms that get associated with ADHD in a lot of people. So I want to do a little bit of an experiment on you guinea pigs.
Oh my goodness. Here he goes.
I'm going to say a couple of numbers between 1 and 9. If I say any of them except 3, I just want you to think to yourself, go. And if I say the number 3, I want you to say no go in your head. You don't have to say it out
In
loud.
my
So
head. Okay.
I'm just going to say some numbers one after another in your head if it's between 1 and 9. Well, they'll all be between 1 and 9. If they're not 3, you say go. If they're 3, you say no go, right? So I'm just going to go 2, 7, 9, 3, 6, 1, 7, 9, 3. And then we're going to continue. Imagine like we've done that for another 40 seconds or so. And then I'm going to stop and ask you, right when we stopped saying the numbers, did you think your mind was on task? Were you mind wandering, thinking about something else? Were you blank in your head?
I was trying to remember which one was go and which one was no. If I'm being honest, I was like, hang on, did I get this wrong?
So that's on task. You were on task and probably doing the go, no go. But then, they did this with people for, I think on average, 52 minutes. And then there was also a learning phase before then. So I think most of them had been at it for over an hour. And so, as you can imagine, as they ask you every 40 to 70 seconds, are you on task? Is your mind wandering? Are you mind blank? Or do you not remember what you were thinking? You'd start to rack up some of the other options on there, right? You'd get off task a bit. You'd get tired. You'd start to wander. So this is exactly what they did. They did it with 32 people with ADHD and 31 people who were neurotypical. They did actually put them through separate verification to verify that they had ADHD or did not, or were neurotypical.
I would hope so.
They were all, you can sort of rely on previous diagnoses and stuff. They did,
true.
but they went people who hadn't been diagnosed. They actually went and put them through the ringer to actually make sure they were neurotypical. They're all adults and they were all recruited from around the Monash University
Were they still
campus.
on their medication?
That was the thing that what Max just said was what I've seen the study before because I was reading the brief and I was like, unmedicated is crazy. Because these people were not medicated, and if you are on any sort of like mental health related medication, they tell you do not get off that. So I wanted to have a look at the method and be like, how the hell do you tell people?
Their meds.
Yeah.
Really?
They did take them off their meds, and there's a lot of stuff in the paper about the approvals they had to get. So it was 32 adults off their meds, 31 neurotypical adults, but all recruited from around Monash. So it was mostly female participants, highly educated participants, and young participants. So we've got the standard caveat of this is a psych study done inside a university. So we're once again getting a very good look into the mind of a Western student. So to keep that in mind. What they were looking for were different types of brain activity, particularly sleep-like slow waves. So they had them, mapped up, connected in to monitor brain activity, and they were looking specifically for what they call slow waves, which are associated with things like sleep, basically. And so what they found was that during these experiments, ADHD individuals exhibited more mind wandering, more mind blanking, and more signs of sleep-like brain activity, like those slower waves. So a higher density of those slower waves per minute. If you have the mapping of this that they've published with the study is actually quite a big difference in some of the brain activity they're showing in the amount of slow waves going on at certain moments versus in ADHD individuals and in neurotypical individuals. They said the higher slow wave density correlated with more errors, slower and less consistent reaction times. So not just, the self-reporting of what your brain activity is between on task, mind wandering, mind blank, don't remember, but they were also looking at reaction times and the difference between your reaction times and all sorts of other stuff as well. And then they conducted some nice little stats on it called a mediation analysis to actually go, is this purely correlation or is there potential causation going on between these two factors? And it did show a link. You can't prove causation in a small study like this without looking at more variables, but they did find a statistical link between the density of slow waves in their brain activity and ADHD-related attention difficulties in the experiment. So a good, strong link there between this sleep-like activity and some of these common attention-related issues that people with ADHD experience. They're saying that they now want to do the next step where they'd use the same method and use the same method that's been used previously in neurotypical people to try and counteract some of this brain activity, these slow waves while you're awake. And one of the ways they can do that is through auditory stimulation, so sound-based stimulation. In,
like the Mario Kart theme track? That's what I've seen on ADHD TikTok.
It could
listen
be.
to Mario.
I'm going to doubt it, but it could be. They say you can get enhanced slow wave activity when you're asleep through certain auditory stimulation. So they want to see if they provide this to people with ADHD, does this actually help remove some of the slow wave activity while they're awake and potentially then improve their attention and task performance and try and help with managing some of those symptoms.
But what if that little treat was a termite? I don't know what. Anyway,
what bridge are we crossing here?
We're crossing something, Max. Let me cook. All right.
Now, people often feel that they can multitask while driving. Now, smartphones have added another layer of interaction, or would you call it distraction? Studies seeking to understand the impact of smartphones on safe driving have a warning for music fans, young and old. It's mainly young. Popular music artists releasing their music on a particular day may be harmful. Unfortunately, researchers cannot conduct live experiments that might eliminate what is going on with the millions of cars on the road today. They can't, for example, ethically instruct half of a group to keep their eyes on the road while telling the other half to search for music as they navigate traffic. But the researchers instead analysed accident statistics on the release days of the 10 most streamed albums between 2017 and 2022. So the data only goes to 2020, including the 10 days before and after the release date. They found there were, on average, 123 million streams for a major album release day compared to 86 million streams on just a normal day. So that reflects a 43% increase on release days.
Yeah.
Then they correlated it with traffic statistics, and researchers found an increase in driver fatalities on the actual release date of a major album, with an overall increase of 15%.
Wow.
As seen over a 10-day period. Unsurprisingly, the increase in fatal accidents was mainly single-occupant vehicles, with their hypothesis being if there was a passenger, they might have helped with downloading the new music. Drivers also tended to be younger, fitting the profile as more avid music consumers. So because they only had data to 2022, the researchers want to revisit this study in the coming years as new statistics become available.
Well, and while it's not, the study period isn't also a global pandemic.
True. And they're hoping that new vehicle technology such as cameras, lane warning sensors and automatic braking will see fatalities drop on major album release days.
That's wow.
I know.
I mean, what a study. It's the classic case of correlation, and potentially not causation, but that is a I mean, enough to look more into, isn't it?
It is very much so. Yeah.
You know, if there's major stuff happening that makes people want to reach for their phones, and it does correlate to more traffic accidents. Wow. It's just one of those things that when you extrapolate it across the hundreds of millions of people who are going to be driving and trying to listen to it on that day, it does lead to a bump that can cause major impacts. Wow, Max.
So I just say, just leave your radio on because you're in the back seat.
Because I was in the back seat, and baby, I'm in too deep.
You're tuning into 4 Triple Z. You're tuning into 4 Triple Z, and the show is No Idea with me, Max. We've got Issy. We've got a friendly neighbourhood marine scientist who will be coming up shortly. We've got Gabriel. We got a text in.
Marky texted in about the sleep-like state and that little experiment we did on air to replicate what they did in that study that came out a few days ago. Marky said, I even turned it up and stopped what I was doing. I fell into a sleep-like state whilst you were speaking. I went in and out of thinking of various unrelated things, breaking up my understanding of what you guys were talking about. And that was just in a 10-second version of a hour-long experiment.
It's a crazy experiment.
Good on you, Marky. 0420626733 is our text line. Let's talk oceans, Max.
Let's do it.
Do you know what tuna is?
Fish.
It's fish!
Thank God someone's working on this. I don't know what I'd do without it.
Fish are friends, not food.
Great start. Gabe, what does a cat say?
Yeah.
Max, what does a chicken say?
Cluck, cluck.
And Izzy, what does a shark say?
All right, everyone. Why do we scream?
Because it feels good.
Wrong.
Distance.
Wrong.
Nah, I got nothing.
Intimidation.
It's because it's how our bodies evolved to demand ice cream.
Right.
Obviously.
Of course.
How else do you get ice cream? Yeah.
Sorry. For a moment, I thought this was a scientific show.
That's how I get ice cream. But if we go back to the science show, as Gabe says, generally it's meant to be our way of being super loud and get our message to go super far. And lots of other animals do that too. Many animals use sound to communicate across their territories, home ranges, sort of advertising their presence to rivals or potential mates, sort of territorial stuff, or, an alarm call, which is another big thing of just being like, one of the reasons you scream is to be like, hey, everyone else, something is happening to me. Either come help or get the hell out so it doesn't happen to you either. Mm-hmm. So for territorial or alarm calls to be effective, they need to travel far enough to reach other individuals. But exactly how far animal sounds travel and why hasn't really been looked into across species lines. And so there's a key unresolved question of is whether how far a sound travels simply due to physics, like your body size. Bigger animals can produce louder, lower frequency sounds that travel further, or whether evolutionary and ecological factors like the size of leaves in your habitat also shapes this. Or could it even be that your home range is just like one tree, so why would you yell louder than that? So this is what we're looking at. This is a study that came from UNSW.
40.
Yeah, they're 38. I'm going 38 again.
Actually 20.
20.
Wow. 20, everybody.
Yeah.
So they looked at 81 studies. This is a review. So they looked at other studies and put them together.
Whoa,
they looked at 81 studies.
We got a sub.
And in the marine science segment, there is no better time to play the sound, which will happen at some point. Just know that it's not a mistake.
Max has really given up on the show. The baby harp steel's not even ready. There we go.
Yeah, there it is. Congratulations. Thank you so much for subscribing. Everyone who subscribes during No Idea gets a baby harp seal sounds played at them. Don't look up the history of the show as to what that was. So this was a review. They're looking at 81 studies covering 103 mammalian species, so only mammals. And of those 103 mammals, there were 71 dry ones and 32 wet ones. And they found out just how loud each of those mammals were. So this is called the maximum propagation distance, which is the furthest recorded distance a call could travel. They did mention that there was a bit of a weird difference across the lines between terrestrial and wet and dry, because the dry ones tended to be like the furthest that a human happened to hear them while they were out in the field, and they'd just mark the distance. Whereas when we do underwater stuff, we rely a lot on hydrophones, so it was a little bit more quantitative in that they'd had a microphone in the water and they could measure exactly how far away they were. So a little bit different, but they put in stuff for the models to sort of account for that, but it was just something that's interesting about how we measure sound. And then they looked at a bunch of factors about their bodies and their lives for each of these mammals, like body mass, call type, diet, habitat, how social they were, etc., all of these things, to try and see what of these factors of their lives were impacting the sound the most, which is like you do a model, you put all these things in, and you see which of them are more frequently increasing or decreasing the sound. Now, here's a bit that got me, and the reason that I'm telling you this story. When they looked at the results, they saw two very different stories and two different answers. Some animals fit one explanation and some fit another. And it was really the wet ones versus the dry ones.
Okay.
So we'll start with my favourite, the wet ones, the aquatic mammals. Body mass for these guys was just the best predictor. So it was pretty simple. It's just the bigger you are, the longer your calls can be heard for. The maximum call distance is bigger. It's at top of the list, obviously. The largest animal that ever lived, going 3 for 3, the blue whale, weighing at about 150 tons. Those guys can send their songs over 1,600 kilometres away.
Really?
Which is frankly unnerving. For reference, the furthest that we can throw our sound is 434 metres. So... which is actually not bad for our size, but still, like, that is 1.6 kilometres. Imagine being able to be heard from that far away.
Yeah.
On the small side, they actually looked at otters, which are a measly 28 kilograms, and their calls can only travel 1 kilometre away. So the wet ones are pretty similar. It's pretty simple. How big you are is how loud you can be. How far your sound can go. Now, there is a bit of a strange turn of the tables. For once, it is the dry ones that are complicated and unexpected. So this is where I'm going to tell you about a hypothesis that's sort of been in the acoustic animal call world for a while, called the acoustic adaptation hypothesis. And this is essentially the idea that the thing that predicts your vocals, pitch, tone, how loud you are, is your habitat. And that's the big thing, because the idea is, the underlying assumption is that everything wants to be as clear as possible and be heard as far as possible. But there are things that you kind of need to get around. So you might be next to a waterfall or a stream, and that has its own sort of acoustic background noise. Or you might live in a dense forest where all those leaves are going to like block the sound and be like sound dampening. So you have to think of ways to get around that. And so this idea is that fundamentally the thing that controls how, I'm going to say how loud, but just know that it means like how far you can be heard from, is habitat. But they didn't find that. And apparently this hypothesis has been contentious for years because they haven't really found any strong evidence for it. There's been like a couple of things that fit it, but not enough. And so all these researchers are like, well, I don't really know why we're sticking to this, but also we should really actually test it. And that's sort of what this was doing. And it didn't really hold up. Not because habitat didn't, but because there were just too many things that actually played into it. But the size of their home range was actually the leading factor that determined how far their calls were heard.
Right.
So like if you live and if you travel, kilometers and kilometers, and that's your whole home range, you'd be heard for that. You'd want to be heard within that range. But if you live in a tree, you probably don't want to be heard outside your tree, or it might not be relevant for you to yell outside your tree. But that's not how it can't be explained by that alone, is the main thing that they want to say. You actually need to have multiple things to sort of predict how far some animal will be able to throw their sound. So a terrestrial animal. So the best model included home range, the call type, so whether it was terrestrial or mating or alarm, the habitat, so that is part of it, and sociality, actually, so like whether they were social animals. So of these, larger home range predicted longer distance, which makes sense. You'd want to be able to yell over your home range. Territorial calls actually went much further than non-territorial calls, which is interesting because it's basically them being like, nah, this is my land, this is where I live, don't come here. And that is, like, I would have thought that mating would be more because you want things to come to you. But apparently not. Territorial stuff really took the biscuit on that one. And there were a couple of things that they said were unexpected. So they said that, so they found that closed terrestrial habitats, meaning forests, things that are sort of like spatially complex and have things in the way.
Yeah.
Dense is a great word to say it. had significantly longer propagation distances, so they could be heard further away than species in open terrestrial habitats, which does sort of fit the theory, but also doesn't make a whole lot of sense, because if you lived in an open terrestrial habitat, it's hard to not be heard from a really long distance away, because there's nothing in the way. So sort of interesting there, in that things in forests tend to be heard further away, and also that social species had calls with longer propagation distances than solitary. So they thought that because the solitary species are more likely to be territorial and try and say, like, hey, this is where I live, no one else live here, to other members of their species, they thought that they would be louder, because then you can give that message over longer distances. But apparently not. It was more the social ones, which to me seems like it might make sense because you have other reasons to communicate over long distances. But they were surprised. So essentially, the cool thing about this is that aquatic and terrestrial mammals are shaped by fundamentally different drivers, just completely different. So they should be separated, really. So in aquatic systems, it is just body mass. It's literally physics, because you're living in an environment where sound is super, super, super important, because it travels so much more efficiently than light and other things. So a lot of animals in the ocean care a lot about sound, and so that makes sense that they would just really go hell for leather, and the only thing stopping them is size. But in terrestrial systems, how much space an animal uses is the primary driver, alongside things like the function of the call, habitat, sociality. And so the shift from body mass to home range as the key predictor is sort of interpreted as evidence that the main pressure here is actually predation pressure. So large aquatic mammals are sort of free from predation pressure, especially when you think about sounds. Like, they're so far away and they're so large that things aren't really going to catch them and they're not going to eat them. But in terrestrial mammals, they kind of have to balance this idea of, like, how far do I actually want to be heard? Because do I want something to come to me? Yeah. So, like, we sort of have this. If you're around animals that you know could eat you, you're not going to go yelling your head off, like announcing your presence. It just doesn't make much sense. And so they're like, this could be genuinely one of the things that's controlling it is predation. So yeah, a really interesting sort of wider idea of how this is. And it's important because we are making habitats noisier. So we need to know what the core drivers are behind it, so that as we do that, we're not losing this information.
Cool.
Hit it! Hit it! Hurry up!
Yeah.
Single press overtake, stay in scenario 7.
If you push me off the track, I think you have to leave a space. All the time you have to leave a space.
Come on. Get it, kiddo. Get it. Woo!
Yeah, you don't need to tell me that. Max, we're in this together, mate. Head down. Come on.
Yes!
Great job, guys. That was hard work. Oh, that was hard work.
F1, just when you thought one Oscar was enough in Formula One, there is a second one after they secured the Academy Award for F1 the movie, receiving it for Best Sound. So, yeah, job done. Chinese GP happened on the weekend, and a new record, or one new record was made with the youngest ever pole sitter in Kimi. I shouldn't call him Raikkonen.
Yeah, well, you wouldn't be the only one that did that.
Antonelli. And it was a sprint weekend, which meant that they didn't get too much practice in, and the McLarens didn't show up for the main race for some reason.
No. Like I said off air, the safety car has done more laps than Oscar Piastri at the moment. So
bit of a sad statistic.
I can't wait for the season opener in Japan, because we're going to ignore those last two races.
Gabe, what do you reckon?
Nothing much to add, really, was it? It was pretty sad showing for the Aussie Oscar Piastri. Hopefully we get to see the car on track during a race soon.
I hope we get to see the car.
Yeah.
And Lewis Hamilton, he managed to get it on the podium for the first time for Ferrari in an actual feature race, not just a sprint, which he won last year.
Yeah, he's a bit of a China specialist, isn't he?
Pretty well.
For sure.
Yeah. And Oscar was looking pretty good on the weekend until his car stopped working. But, well, as we say, we'll have to wait till Japan to see what's going on.
Yeah.
F1 Academy also started up,
huge weekend for the first... Is my mic on? Yeah.
2 races.
First race of the schedule. And, Yeah, very good showings all round. I'm just pulling up the standings right now.
Yeah,
Sorry,
right.
I am. But
it was a reverse grid for the first race, so the top 8.
I love a good reverse grid, by the way.
The top 8 was swapped around, so number 8 was started off on pole, and they actually won the race in the end, funnily enough. So they're all very evenly matched, the cars and the drivers, it would seem.
Yes. And Peyton Westcolt also made, it was her first F1 Academy race weekend, and she also made a maiden podium in race 2 as well. I'm just pulling up the race 1 stats, but very impressive all round, and I was actually very satisfied to be able to watch the F1 Academy at a reasonable time as well. It worked quite well with the Chinese Grand Prix, but obviously it throws a bit of a spanner in the works with what we now have confirmed with the Saudi Arabia Grand Prix being cancelled due to ongoing conflict in the Middle East.
Were they going to feature there?
They were going to feature there, so that's now we've been cut to 6 rounds out of our already 7 rounds. So I think it is going to throw a spanner in the works for the girls, but overall very, very impressive. It was really nice seeing some of these drivers like Megan Bruce, who substituted for Ava Anatognis last year, finally be able to drive in her first seat, and she was very excited as well. So it was nice to see all the drivers making their way onto the grid. But yeah, that's probably what I've got covered. But just also on Kimi Antonelli, I looked up his age recently. He's born in 2006.
Yes.
Which is insane.
Yeah.
19.
He's younger than Fernando Alonso's career. Like, it's insane to think about. The poor bloke having to retire because of the vibrations. He was actually taking his hands off the wheel on the straights, which is just insane. But again, it's just an incredible race, I think. It was an incredible race weekend all round. Academy, F1, the feeders. Just really, really solid racing. And, great to see Hamilton up there, and also great to see that pole record broken. Everyone thought Maxi back in 2018 might have been able to do it. Unfortunately, Ricciardo denied him, and people thought that record was basically then going to stand forever with Sebastian Vettel. But nope, Kimi has shown them wrong.
But it did confirm that the Mercedes is certainly at the top, at least at the start of this new regulation set with the 1-2 finish. So IndyCar, Max?
Yeah, well, they're saying that Mercedes got a better downforce, and that's where McLaren's lacking the downforce because they're using the same engine,
same power unit, rather. Yeah.
Anyway, IndyCar, it was in the US. Obviously, it's an open wheel class there. It was in Arlington, and it was won by Kyle Kirkwood. Alex Palou was second, and Aussie Will Power was on the podium in third.
Very good.
Brilliant.
Former supercar champion Scott McLaughlin finished 11th, and ex-Formula 1 driver Mick Schumacher, son of Mick Schumacher, he came home last of those still running, and he complained a lot about how bumpy the street circuit was. And one guy quipped, "This is not Monaco, mate." Okay. Anyway.
That's quite good.
And then NASCAR also happened. And I only mention NASCAR because we're looking at SVG, Shane Van Gisbergen, who is an former champion in supercars. And he's talking a big game this week until he actually slid on the first lap, got the back out, and he went straight down to the center of the oval and hit what they call the apron, and it just split his front. It broke his front splitter, so his aerodynamics were stuffed for the rest of the race. So he finished 5 laps down, but of those still running. So he did get a point, and now he's gone from 5th in the championship to 16th, which is still all right. But he's got to be 16 or lower to go into the finals, which happened at the end.
There you go.
Cool.
Nothing much coming up this weekend in the racing world, but the Formula 1 is back in Japan on the 29th.
Yep.
So that'll be the last race in a while because, like we mentioned, the Middle East situation has shut down the 2 races following, which means there'll be no Formula 1 racing in April. What I saw from the FIA, who regulates the Formula 1, is there's no plans on doing a replacement, I think, like within those race weekends, but they are still potentially looking at some other options later on in the season to try and make up a race or 2, but none of that's confirmed.
Okay.
You know, the iPad generation criticisms there.
Gen Alpha.
And they found that babies and toddlers exposed to television or video viewing may be more likely to exhibit atypical sensory behaviors, like being disengaged, disinterested in activities, seeking more intense stimulation in the environment. A lot of these things that we think of over the airwaves. We have a small little base.
Come to get you, Gabe.
They are coming to get me.
All those iPad kids.
They found your lair.
They want their iPads back.
Yeah.
You're tuned into 4ZZZ, and the show is No Idea with me, Max. We got Peta, we got Gabe.
They never did get
Izzy.
those iPads back.
Because you changed your lair.
I did.
What do you got
Still
for us,
stacked
Gabe?
up in the corner. Max, I've got for you a bit of an extension to our MotoRap this week because earlier this month we were in the Australian GP, the first Formula One race of the season. We had media passes given to us and we were able to walk around and really get quite an amazing look into the world of F1 and not just the sort of entertainment spectacle that it is, but also the engineering masterclass that it puts on. And it was not the first time we've had access in. It was the first time I've been into the paddock and getting into the real deal, but it wasn't the first time we've gone, Max. I remember the first time I went, we were both there, and the thing that shocked me the most wasn't just walking around and seeing all these famous faces and the cars up close and you know, all the other little bits and pieces that do surprise you. The thing that I remember being really shocked by was walls of tires just throughout the garages, throughout the Formula 3, the Formula 2, the Formula 1, even the supercars and the other support races that are on. Just so many tires. And from that moment on, I was like, I want to talk to Pirelli, who are the ones who are contracted on for the Formula 1, Formula 2, Formula 3 and the Formula 1 Academy to make all the tyres so the teams have access to the same thing to try and level the playing field a bit, reduce how much money has to go into building the cars by giving them some stock parts like tyres. And so I've always wanted to talk to them about that. And the 2026 regulation changes to Formula 1 completely changing how the cars work was such a good opportunity to do that because, you know, the power units are about now 50% battery, 50% internal combustion, a big change. It used to be a lot less battery. The cars are a bit smaller. There's active aerodynamics on the front and the rear wings with flaps that go up and down, big shifts in the shape of the car to change how the air flows over them. But one thing that also changed completely we haven't heard nearly as much as about because it's been covered up by all those other things is tires. Yes. And so I asked Pirelli to talk about it. They said, sure. I sat down with their chief engineer, Simone Berra, right before free practice 1 at the Australian GP. So minutes before the tyres got put under full strain for the first time in this season after they'd made them. They've done some testing in Bahrain that I'll get into, but they hadn't, a lot of the time these teams hold back. So it was the first time they've seen it in earnest. And so I just asked Simone what the changes have been to the tyres for 2026.
There's a big change obviously this year with the regulations. A lot of people are talking about the batteries, the ICE combustion units, the changes to the ground effect and all that sort of stuff. But the tyres have changed too as part of it, which I don't think people have really thought about much. Could you just run through the basics of what's changed with the tyres?
Yeah, of course. So basically we slightly changed the tire width to cope with the new regulations, let's say from FIA, to reduce the drag also from a tire perspective. And we reduced as well the diameters of the tires. And then obviously we completely redesigned the structure to cope with the new loads of the new cars, etc. And also a new compound range. So for us it was basically not a blank sheet, but almost. So we started from almost zero with just let's say a few information from the 18 inches product that we already had in the previous years, but then we started to develop something completely new. We worked throughout the last season with the mule cars to try to have during the development test a proper car configuration that can let's say simulate similar loads to the current regulations. So we worked with these cars that were the current cars but just modified a little bit to generate these loads. And we tested the new specification of the tires. So basically tires are completely new, sizes, constructions and compounds.
Completely new. So it's still the 18-inch rims on the wheels, but they're a bit narrower and they're a bit shorter, and what they're made of is completely different. So big changes to the tyres this year, and you can feel a bit of nerves around the Pirelli camp throughout the weekend, and lots of testing and stuff. And every time they'd come out, the tyres would come out the back of the garages, and we'd see them scraping bits off the tyres, really analysing the temperature and the way it's worn and how things have changed, and looking at there were engineers at each team immediately looking at stuff, and then they whisked them away so the other teams can't can't cheat off or look at each other and compare notes, and they do more testing behind the scenes. But part of the testing that happened a bit before the race in Bahrain, after the cars had been on track for testing, the Pirelli gets to do some testing, and that had been cut short because of the war in Bahrain. They had to quickly get out of there and had to cut that testing short. So I was kind of curious if that had impacted anything for the racing about to start, right? But after in the days after we did this interview. So I asked Simone a bit about what was going on in that testing and if they missed out on anything, any impacts that might have.
Well, the test is more related to the 2027, so it's just a step ahead for the next season. It was an important test because it was supposed to be a wet test. We were going to wet the track with water to do a wet test, but unfortunately this has an impact for us, unfortunately, because we needed to collect information also for the wet and intermediates, which for us it's more difficult, let's say, to test because there are less opportunities, as you can understand. And we had this opportunity in Bahrain with also the collaboration from Bahrain as well, from Bahrain circuit as well. So it's a shame, but unfortunately this is the situation, and we go ahead with the plan that we have already. We still have other 2 wet tests, and we will try to gather as much information as possible.
Thankfully Melbourne's not too rainy this year.
Yeah, exactly.
So they lost their wet weather testing effectively, where they dump a bunch of water on the track and see how it
Why would they do
runs
that
with the tires.
Anyway,
it's just where the testing happens. Is where the deals happen. It's just part of it. So they have to dump a lot of water onto the track and do the wet testing that way. I imagine it takes a lot of water backs to keep it wet in Bahrain. But that's what they missed. But it was focused on next year's tires, so they'd been doing those sorts of tests last year already for this current season. So it was mainly for next year.
12-month lead time.
A lead time, but I think they were grateful that it wasn't raining in Melbourne because they did miss, the last bit of testing on this new regulation of tyre, even if it was mainly focused on next year. So then I got to the question that I'd kind of been hanging out to ask, which was, how many tyres do they make for this season? Because there's a lot that are given to each team each weekend. So I'm like, okay, what does this actually stack up to?
Yeah, so basically we are providing 20 sets per teams. So in the end, we are fitting quite a big amount of tires.
Tires, I guess.
Yeah. In terms of total tires, is 1,800 across the race weekend.
Wow.
So it's quite.
Do you know what that stacks up to across 2026?
The amount in total, it's quite a big amount. Yeah.
I ran the actual number, so it's about, what do you say, 1,800 for the weekend for Formula One. I think it was just Formula One. Maybe it was for all 3. But I ran the numbers on how many tyres Pirelli is making just for Formula One just in 2026. The answer I got to, because it depends on which track it is and if there's sprints and all sorts of stuff, the answer I got to comes to 10,690 sets of tyres. But that's sets, and each set has 4 tyres in it. So that's 42,760 tyres. Each weighs about 11.5 kilos. So that's 490 tons of tires, and they're all made new for each race. They to keep it even, they have to make a new batch, and that's not including the ones that I'm sure they make as spares and trial runs and all sorts of other stuff. That's just the ones that actually get provided to the teams.
On the race
but
and
they make them new for each race. So it's made out of natural rubber, synthetic rubber, Kevlar, carbon thread, steel, nitrogen, a whole bunch of stuff. So I asked Max, and you were interested in this as well, about the sustainability aspect of
because this
Pirelli.
is a big thing, because Michelin will not go into Formula One again. They used to Bridgestone and Michelin both used to be tyre suppliers, and they want degradation on their tyres, and Michelin said no. Well, if you want our tyres to degrade, we're not interested. They want to make a tyre that lasts the whole race.
Part of the deal that they make as being the providers, Pirelli, is that they have to make tyres, like you said, that degrade. So there has to be pit stops for the cars. And there's an extra element of the racing. So because otherwise you would just make the fastest tyre that can last the whole race distance.
Correct.
Making a tyre that lasts 2 hours is possible. Like our tyres last years on our commercial cars, obviously not put through the same strain, but so they have to make them to degrade. So I mean, okay, with all this material that's going in, with the big focus on sustainability, or at least an image of sustainability in the current regulations, I asked about what it's like in Pirelli. It was an interesting moment because the the communications person who was sitting with us jumped in.
And ushered you away.
Who wasn't. So he's not mic'd up. I did clip it so you can hear him, but it won't sound quite as good. But it's interesting, so I've kept it in. So this is what they said.
You sort of have to make them to degrade.
Yeah.
That's part of the bid.
Yeah.
So how does that work?
Well, first of all, the tires are FSC certified with 80% of materials certified with FSC. And then, the tires in all the cycle, obviously they are used, but then we bring the tires back to UK after each race. Mm-hmm. So the tires are coming back and are recycled in a very different way. There is, let's say, attention also from our side in recycling the tires and to the sustainability situation.
Also produce secondary raw material with used tires.
Yeah.
Secondary materials with used tyres is what he jumped in with at the end there. They also mentioned they're doing some stuff about trying to reduce how much energy goes into warming the tyres by reducing how much warmth they can put into them, just sort of reducing some power. But the tyres themselves, previous year reports say that natural rubber from trees makes up about 15% of the tyres. Of that, 80% is FSC certified, so 20% isn't, and FSC certifications aren't perfect in their own right. The synthetic component means almost certainly made from oil and methane and then produced into synthetic rubber. It was interesting because I thought there might be a bit more behind it, Max, in the sustainability side, but it is really just a lot of raw materials that get used. And I think, it must just be so incredibly difficult for them to meet those needs and expectations you mentioned of what's required for this high caliber of motor racing, that the sustainability stuff, even if you try, there's such a big focus on the performance aspect that it sort of gets sidelined. It feels, in my opinion, there's millions and millions of dollars on the line. There is safety on the line as well. So far, they seem to be focusing on the performance side of it. And it seems to be working as well in this latest regulations. We've seen 2 race weekends now, and across all of that, the racing's been competitive, largely due to the battery and other things that have changed, but the tyres haven't gotten in the way in anything I've seen and any reporting I've seen of that racing. The degradation that they are asked to produce so that they have to have pit stops and run different types of tyres has produced offset racing with different cars faster at different periods and different opportunities to get ahead of different people. So it does seem to be working, this latest regulations tyre set that Pirelli's produced. And so it'll be interesting to see how it goes going forward, because like I said, the Pirelli were really beaving away over the tyres after every session in the AusGP, and I'm sure the same was true over the last weekend. It's on to Japan now, where we've got a sort of different type of circuit again, and we'll see how they hold up. But that was my chat with Simone, the chief engineer for Pirelli at the Formula One in Melbourne at the AusGP. That's what I got for you, Max.
This is just a shout out and a thank you to Billy, who just resubscribed to 4ZZZ. Thank you so much for your loyalty in supporting the station.
Tune to 4ZZZ and the show. Just take it away, Issy.
Yeah, it's no idea, baby. 4ZZZ.
Just go, Issy. Just
And
take over.
Wake up, babes. It's not only is it 11:30, but also new rock lizards have been announced. New rock monitor lizards as well. So,
rock monitor.
Let me move over. Rock lobster. Rock lizards are in now. This is from the Australian National University QS ranking, Divas.
ANU.
The ANU.
16.
ANU.
18.
You're 32, babes. Come on.
Damn.
They
We're all
have
mixed up.
identified new species of rock-dwelling monitor lizards in the savannas of northeastern Queensland. So, Genesis varanus are monitor lizards due to their habit of getting up on their hind legs to monitor their survey.
Mm-hmm.
They are a species that can be as big as your Komodo dragons to as small as your 16-grand damper peninsula monitor lizards, which are itty-bitty. In Australia alone, we have 34 recognised species, with up to 11 species known to coexist together in some regions. But there have been continuous sightings of what has been described as undescribed rock monitoring lizards in the northeastern Queensland area. Until now, they have been formally described and identified with 3 species found. The rainbow rock monitor, the orange-headed...
My favourite already.
The orange-headed rock monitor and the yellow-headed rock monitor species as the first rock-adapted monitor lizards as well. So not just monitor lizards in their kind of general area, but they are
the first monitor lizards to not be terrified of rocks. They're like,
they
what
love
is
the
this
rocks.
thing?
Huge,
they love a rock.
Huge rock heads.
Guys, I think we've figured this out.
Yes, they should get together and have a band, a rock band. Upon genetic examination, the 3 populations were found to be distinct species that have evolved independently for, a couple millions of years, due to the fact that they are also the most range-restricted Australian monitor species. So they have developed in such a unique kind of environment amongst the sandstones of the savannas of northeastern Queensland that they are quite distinct from their other monitor lizard family. This isn't surprising that they haven't been formally described or found with how under-monitored the eastern Australian savanna is, with the yellow-headed rock monitor being commonly misidentified or just slapped the label of undescribed species. And what was surprising to researchers was the other 2, the rainbow rock monitor and the orange-headed rock monitor, went largely unnoticed. So they thought that these were all the same undescribed species for quite a while until they started looking a little closer and found they had different colors and also different sorts of head sizes as well. Now, identification comes with a major risk for monitor lizards due to them being a huge staple in pet trade as well. So they are very
now
common.
They've become a rarer thing that people can collect.
So they are very commonly found when illegal pet movement is happening. These types of lizards, due to their quite large, how do I describe them? Like distribution across Africa, Indian continents, all across kind of the Asian peninsula, they are quite commonly found. Co-author and ANU PhD student Wesley Red stated that monitor lizards attract a large amount of attention from keen naturalists to reptile keepers. Unfortunately, some people searching for these animals are careless and damage cap rock habitats. Most populations are in remote, rugged country, but I do worry about the most accessible areas. Time will tell, he stated. So, whilst very, very exciting news, obviously news that has to be kind of considered within the larger realm of obviously lizard species they are quite pretty and they are quite collectible. So I'm very excited to see what it kind of unlocks for future species found in Australia, but obviously there needs to be a little side of caution as well. So be aware, but not alarmed.
It's similar to Gabe's shiny rock story.
Yes.
Yeah.
But probably keep these rocks, don't flip these rocks, put them back.
Okay.
Leave them unharmed.
How was your journey here? Eventful? Yeah.
4ZZZ. Wicked Radio.
Yeah.
No idea. Space news. On this day, the year is 1965, and a Soviet cosmonaut leaves his spacecraft called Vauxhall No. 2 for 12 minutes and becomes the first person to conduct a spacewalk. So that's pretty cool. Back in 1965.
That is pretty cool.
That is very cool.
And then
be very nerve-wracking to be the first person.
And one of our favourite stories from last year being the stranded, not stranded space astronauts on the ISS, right?
Yes.
I've
heard there's been some repercussions of this recently.
On this day, back last year, NASA astronauts Suni Williams and Butch Wilmore finally returned to Earth from the International Space Station after 9 months instead of 1 week.
Did you see that someone recently dropped out of NASA because of that? One of the guys on the mission, he was like, no, that wasn't meant to happen. I was like, finally, they admit it.
And they both left the NASA now, Suni Williams and Butch Wilmore.
I would.
Yeah.
Can you imagine if your work left you in space for 9 months?
The overtime must be crazy.
The pay would be incredible.
Yeah.
And if I'm allowed a bit of poetic license, on this day -2, so I'm talking about Monday, it was actually called Robert Goddard Day. And Robert H. Goddard was an American physicist, inventor, and engineer credited with creating and building the world's first liquid-fueled rocket, which was successfully launched on March 16, 1926. So,
26.
Yeah. That's all I've really got for space news this week.
A bunch of history. Very interesting history.
Love.
What is the independent variable that makes No Idea tick? That's what I want to know.
You tuned into 4ZZZ, and the show is No Idea. And we should talk about subscribing to the station, this wonderful station, Gabrielle.
We should, Max. And you've put me on a script this week, which is a ringing endorsement for last week's, where I linked emojis into subscribing to this wonderful station. But I'll go for what you've given me here, Max. You've given me a new randomized clinical trial that suggests that listening to specially designed music for just 24 minutes, which they said was the right dose too. They looked into how much of a dose it is, and they said 24 minutes was the sort of ideal dose, may significantly lower anxiety. The music was paired with auditory beat stimulation, a technique that uses rhythmic sound patterns to influence brain activity. Researchers say the approach could provide an accessible, drug-free option for people looking for additional ways to manage stress and regulate emotions. And Max, you know what the wonderful thing about 4ZZZ is that you get to choose how long you listen to it. So if you would like to cut it off to that beautiful 24 minutes of a dose, you can do that. If you'd like to listen to it for 25 minutes, you can do that. If you'd like to listen to us for 1 minute, you can do that. And if you'd like to listen to the full 2 hours of our show, you can do that as well. And if you want to listen to 4ZZZ 24/7 constantly, we broadcast 24/7 constantly at 102.1 FM and on the 4ZZZ.org.au website and Community Radio Plus app. And if you would like to, that 24/7 broadcasting relies heavily on the supporters, the subscribers to 4ZZZ, quite literally keeping the lights on, keeping the mics on, keeping the signal going out. Max, what are the options for everyone if they would like to join?
Go to our website. If you're under 18, it's $25. If you want to subscribe your pet, it's $25. Concession is $40. Full subscription is $80. A passionate is $140. And a super sub gets your name written downstairs for $500. And there should be a monthly prize.
There is a monthly prize from the beautiful Glitter Records, offering a $200 gift card redeemable in-store for any mix of records, cassettes, CDs, books, or merch at their California Lane shop front in Fortitude Valley. So if you're subscribed during the month of, March now? Far out. You can go in the running for that prize.
Okay, sign us out, Gabe.
I think we're done.
That is all we have time for. This show was brought to you thanks to all of those subscribers to 4ZZZ. Like we said, you can join them at 4ZZZ.org.au. Just check it out look at the options if you haven't already, because it is what keeps us going. And on that website, 4ZZZ.org.au, is where you can listen back to the full recording of this show with all the music as well as a bunch of our previous shows. The condensed version is available on your podcasting platform of choice. To search up No Idea 4ZZZ. That's no with a K for No Idea. We're on that No Idea 4ZZZ handle on all the socials as well. I'm going to start posting stuff again, Max. I've been here, there, and everywhere the last few weeks, but I've got more coming. Thanks to Toby for editing up the pod. Thanks to you, Max, Issy, and Peta for your stories this week. We'll be back in your ears next week. Between now and then, keep those hands off your smartphone when you're driving after a big album drops. Don't sleep on ADHD slow wave brain activity. Leave rock monitors alone, and don't get into a shouting contest with a blue whale. Right now, Eco Radio is coming your way. They'll take you through for the next hour. It's recycling day today, so they're going to have a lot to talk about, and I'm sure. What are you playing us out with, Max?
Well, I'll just say we just got another text in from Danny, and Danny says we could have an optimal health show which just lasts for 24 minutes of music each bracket. with anti-anxiety music. It's quite good.
Absolutely brilliant.
Okay, and we'll speak to you next week.
See ya.
See ya.
Bye.
I'm a goddamn marvel of modern science.